So we've been through the election and we've been going through a pandemic, and there's a lot of disagreement about what happened, what the facts are. Um, and it's weird to me that we have to talk about not agreeing on what the facts are. Typically, when you're having a reasonable conversation, a reasoned conversation, you're you're coming at it with a rational idea of some agreement about what the facts are, or what we can agree can be presented as facts. Things that are verifiable, for instance. Um, the sun rises in the east is verifiable. Um, Donald Trump lost the popular vote. That's verifiable. Um, that that we can't seem to agree on facts is bothersome, because without agreeing on what a fact is, we can't have a reasonable, rational, adult conversation. And that just makes everything else, well, moot. How do we have a discussion when what you say is a fact isn't a fact? Or if I say something that isn't a fact, you say, hey, that's wrong. And all I say is, well, you got to do your research. Please don't act like we haven't done our research. Anyone hasn't done the research. Rather, look at where their information is coming from and whether that source is verifiable, whether that source verifies their sources, whether the source is reliable, whether the source has a record of truth telling, or does that record consist of half truths or just outright making stuff up, and then demanding that you accept it as true. Facts can be found in news articles. They can be vetted. Um, Facts can be found in scholarly work, because that's what scholars do. They pursue the truth about a topic, because that's what they're trained to do. That's what they went to school for. Um, I've seen people say, I'm an epidemiologist, or I'm a public health worker. I've got certain training, certain education that informs my opinion. These people might say, people like Dr. Anthony Fauci, who spent a lifetime dealing with pandemic situations and responses and management and all of that. Unlike Donald Trump. Um, I won't even talk about his experiences right now, because, well, not a lot of what he says seems to be reliable, verifiable, or otherwise factual. And that's a problem coming from the president. If our leader doesn't deal in facts, and his followers insist that he's the most honest person they've ever seen, then what are we doing? I mean, Trump says that back in March, he says, "Oh, it'll be here and gone before you know it. We've only got 17 cases. It'll be down to zero before you know it. It's nothing to worry about." Only come to find out, back in February, he admitted to Bob Woodward that he knew it was going to be bad. He knew, and he didn't want to create a panic. Well, if you manage a situation right, nobody's going to really panic if you know what you're doing. And for a businessman of his alleged caliber, you would think that the president would be able to pull his resources together around him throughout the federal government and craft an appropriate, informed management system to tackle something as huge as the coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic. But no, he did the exact opposite, because he wouldn't deal with the facts. Not he didn't know the facts, he knew the facts. He just chose to ignore those facts because they were inconvenient. And this seems to be a common theme, this ignoring inconvenient facts. And, it's uncomfortable to say, hey, I messed up, or hey, I got the wrong, I had the wrong impression, I misunderstood this, or this piece of propaganda just seemed really convincing. Yeah, propaganda. And that's what the right has been peddling. And it continues to peddle with these ridiculous claims that Donald Trump actually won the election. He didn't. There was no fraud. He's brought some 51 cases in various states, districts, and even to the Supreme Court, and brought no evidence. No evidence of fraud. None. No reliable evidence. No evidence that a judge would hear, because it's not solid enough to build a case around. There's just not enough. There's no solid evidence that voter fraud was committed, and certainly not to the degree that would be required for Donald Trump to have actually won and to have had this election, quote unquote, stolen from him. It's just any narrative suggesting otherwise is propaganda. Plain and simple. Biden won the popular vote by millions. He won the Electoral College very handily. Every little bit of claim about fraud it's a fabrication. It is a fabrication or otherwise some misunderstanding of how election laws and what election activities like counting ballots, what those things actually look like in practice. People are like, oh, well, this video right here shows, but they're wrong about what it shows. And then it gets debunked. And people continue passing those videos around anyway, making the claim that this exposes fraud when it's already been explained by people in election law, people who run elections, people who are election workers, explained by the people who actually do the job. It's been explained by those people that the video you're looking at isn't an example of election fraud. It's actually part of their regular procedure. And still, these people want to hold on to this idea that Donald Trump won, therefore it had to have been fraud, and Donald Trump continues to claim fraud, but for 51 out of 51 cases that he has brought before court through various legal actions, every single one of those 51 cases, he did not prove fraud. Did not. He had his possibility for a day in court with the Supreme Court of the United States. He could have gone right to the Supreme Court had he had the evidence to be heard. Worse, Texas didn't even have standing. See, standing is this idea that an injured party has the right to bring a suit forward. Okay, that's standing. Texas could not show that it had been injured by the other states actually enforcing their own election laws and procedures. They could not show injury. In fact, Article 2 of the Constitution states clearly that the states have the sole right to determine their own election laws and procedures state by state. That's part of being a federation of states. All right, it's called the federal government because it's the federation of states coming together for establishing what laws the entire country will be under. Okay? So Texas didn't have standing. Donald Trump never presented evidence that would be efficacious enough to actually be heard in court. Essentially, SCOTUS was like, you're wasting our time. Every court below them essentially said, you're wasting our time. You have no evidence. You don't have verifiable, reliable kind of evidence, and you don't have anything. There was no fraud. In fact, most of the cases didn't even allege fraud because they didn't have the evidence. And if you make a claim in court, you have to provide the evidence to go with it. And a lawyer presenting a case for fraud where there's no evidence is looking to get disbarred. That's just how it is. So if there are no facts to back up the claim isn't going to be brought forward in the court. And that's exactly how it went down. All of this said, people who are watching OANN, they're watching Newsmax, they're not dealing in facts. They're dealing in wild conspiracy theories that have largely already been debunked, and claim that everything that doesn't agree with that really skewed, perverted point of view of the world, anything that disagrees with that is simply fake news. It's fake news, it's fake facts. They are the only harbingers of truth in their minds, and that is a real problem. Because when someone has that wall up, they are absolutely convinced that they're right. Nothing's going to change their minds, and the rest of us are heretics, so to speak. We are heretics to their cult of personality and propaganda. So how do we fix this? Because it's serious. When you have a large population of people who refuse to operate on facts and instead operate on conspiracy theory fantasies, that is a true and present danger to our democracy, because these people vote. An informed populace is absolutely essential for a democracy to work. About a third of us are uninformed, easily a third, if not more. I might even give it 2/3. That might be worth looking for studies on that, But there's a lot of misinformation out there, and a lot of people buy it. And they vote. People who think that Trump won the election when he didn't. People who are threatening insurrection, even as we speak here now. We have a state lawmaker in Texas that decided to introduce another article for secession. We already had a war about that. What, y'all didn't learn? I mean, the chances are it's not going to go anywhere. There's just more blowhard, blunder, frickin', crap coming from the Deep South, who's always been insecure and even resentful of the Civil War 150 years ago. Come on, guys, get over it, would you please? But they're not dealing in reality, and that's the difficult part. When you're not dealing in reality and you're voting in the booth about issues where you don't have factual information, and you're voting on incorrect information, when you're voting using propaganda as your yardstick for what's true, that's a problem. So how do we get this fixed? I don't know. But I'm open to ideas. I want to hear it, because something's got to be done. Otherwise, we are in serious jeopardy. Our entire American experiment is in jeopardy when ill-informed people vote and rise to power and become sycophants to a cult of personality. Some people like Trump because they think he speaks plainly, speaks the truth, speaks his mind. The truth is, his speech patterns have been analyzed by experts, by people who specialize in analyzing speech patterns. That's what they do. Some of them work for law enforcement to help identify voices on the phone and where they may be from. And anyway, speech pattern experts have said repeatedly that Trump speaks at a fourth grade level. There's nothing wrong with speaking at a fourth grade level when you might actually say something worthwhile. But I have yet to hear Trump utter a single fact that's important. I don't think he has the capacity. He is too concerned with himself. He's too concerned with being praised and being seen as the best and the most knowledgeable, and his appearances, he's keeping up appearances as best as he can, and he's failing miserably. And the truth is, if you think this is a guy worthy of respect, after the countless lies that he's told, where 2,600 plus easily false statements that he has uttered before taking office even, it's unacceptable. And if you think this is a guy to look up to, it makes me wonder why. Why him? Just why him? There are so many other successful business people, successful millionaires and billionaires that are worth looking up to, you know? Donald Trump's character, I've heard the defenses. I've heard a variety of his supporters defend the more noxious things that have dropped out of his mouth. And it doesn't make sense to me. Because at the end of the day, he doesn't behave like a decent human being. He behaves like a narcissist. And he's gaslighting every single one of his loyal followers. And that is also dangerous. Because followers of a narcissist will do almost anything to garner his attention, his affection, his support, his protection from himself. Because that's how narcissists do. Anyhow, I think we covered a lot today. And thanks for listening. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe. I'm going to be doing this on a regular basis. Take care, y'all. And wear a mask. It goes over your nose. Thanks. Bye.